Rainwings, what a colorful bunch of dragons. They probably have the most color variation out of all the Wings of Fire tribes because they can typically manually vary their own hue. This, alongside their iconic frills, lead to a lot of creative freedom for designs. For this row of designs, I landed on the theme of weird and/or colorful animals based on a couple of suggestions. I think I've been using too many inanimate objects as inspiration so far, save for a few bugs and plants, so it's about time I switch it up. Anyways, let's just get right into it. Speaking of switching things up, you'll notice that I'm drawing this row starting backwards. This is mostly because I didn't want to start with the sandwings anymore, and it just adds a little variation to this sort of thing. I'll probably continue to do this for the designs going forward. Also, these two beginning dragons, the Leafwing and Silkwing, get redrawn, so I'm not gonna go into detail about them. But the Leafwing is based on the strange bug that I think is called the Lanthorn Fly. I initially wanted to try using a leaf bug, but the leaf bug is just, well, a leaf. So I opted for something with a little more color diversity. The Silkwing was based on the Eyed Hawk Moth, and I purposefully chose something that didn't have a whole lot of color because I think I'd go crazy if I didn't. Silkwings and Rainwings are basically the most colorful dragons out there. No hue is safe from them, so limiting myself seemed like the best option here. Going off of a suggestion, I had the Hivewing based on a bee-eater bird. I thought it would be ironic for the bee tribe to be based on a bee-eater, so that's how I landed on that. The frill was based on the shape of its wings, and the face shape was mildly based on the bird's face shape. The Nightwing was based on the painted dog or African wild dog. I initially gave this guy a somewhat bulky face based on the dog, but the design kind of went all over the place, so I eventually redrew it. I kept the big curvy horns though, which were based on the dog's big round ears. I chose the not-so-colorful tufted deer as inspiration for the Icewing. I mainly chose it because of its tufted head and for its fangs. In turn, the tuft influenced the partial frill on the design's head as well as the fangs that stick out from its mouth. The Fangtooth Moray was picked for the Seawing, mostly because of its fangs and slightly because of the color pattern. I made the horns wavy and tall, intending them to resemble the shape of an eel. I also gave them a mouthful of sharp teeth and blunt webbing down their neck. For the Skywing, I picked the golden pheasant for its bright and warm colors. I tried basing its frill off of the weird feathers that run down the side of the bird's neck. I also gave it a short, narrow face to mimic the face shape of the bird. That's a difficult sentence right there. Also going off of a suggestion, I chose the strange primate, the mandrill, to base the Mudwing on. The scales around the eyes run down to the nose to mimic the thing on the mandrill's face. I also gave them a divot in their horns as well as a jagged frill to kind of mimic fur. Finally, the Sandwing was based on the Thorny Devil. It mainly influenced its cute, blunt face and the horns that stick out of their head and nose. This one is now my second favorite, alongside Pierce the Sea Sky hybrid, just because of their smushed face. I apologize in advance if this gives it respiratory problems like they do with pugs. At this point, I decided to redraw the Nightwing, Silkwing, and Leafwing. I aimed to make the Nightwing's design less cluttered by unifying it a little more with comet or sparkle shapes. Meanwhile, I redrew the Silkwing and Leafwing because I thought they just looked a little out of place. I think it's because I just completely forgot I could mess around with their facial shapes when drawing them, so they both just look a little basic. I kept most of the same ideas I had with the original sketch, I just made them a little more different and distinct this time around. The Leafwing's colors were heavily based on those of the Lanthorn Fly, but after letting it sit for a while, I decided to redo the colors later on. It just looked all over the place, and every time I looked at the pattern on their frill, I was reminded of eggs, so yeah. I opted to make the Silkwing look like a more saturated version of the eyed hawk moth. I made the base color a warm light brown and mimicked the moth by giving it shades of pink in their frill and a light blue in their eyes and eye patterns. Yet again, I took the colors from this design's inspirational animal and placed them where I thought they would fit. The only notable thing I can say here is that I was finally able to portray the transparency of their frill during this stage. The Nightwing was a little tricky to color. I wanted to try doing the same thing I did with the Silkwing and just take the animal, speculate what it would look like with more saturated colors, and then go from there. It ended up looking a little too bright and garish for a Nightwing hybrid, so I recolored it later. I kept some of the same ideas though, like the yellow sparkles and the splotchy pattern on their underbelly and frill. I kind of winged it for the Icewing colors as their inspiration wasn't much to go off of. I decided to give them some pastel green and pink colors with some jagged patterns on their frill and back. The Seawing was heavily based on the Fangtooth Moray, so it was given a similar yellow splotchy pattern. Instead of being complemented by a dark orange though, I made it dark blue for their Seawing side. The Skywing was also given similar patterns and colors from their inspiration. They were given many stripes that were supposed to somewhat look like feathers, and I gave them differently colored eyes later on. Coloring the Mudwing was simple since they simply got the same colors as a mandrill, with a dull brown base instead of black like a mandrill's fur. The Sandwing was given slightly saturated oranges and yellows with a pattern similar to their Thorny Devil inspiration. They were also given purple accents that outline their splotches. For the Nightwings' new colors, I decided to stray from their inspiration and give them a purple and teal color palette, keeping the yellow sparkle patterns that dapple their frill and underbelly. And finally, the Lakewing got a somewhat swapped color palette compared to their original colors. I made their body red and their back green, and eliminated a lot of the colors that kind of cluttered their design. And there you have it, all the complete Rainwing hybrid designs. But just hold your horses for a second longer because I've got something to say. I'm going to be live on Tuesday, June 10th at 2 PM PST, drawing hopefully at least half of the Nightwing row. So feel free to pop in and hang out and suggest things because that's what the Nightwings theme is gonna be, livestream suggestions. There will be a few more details coming up once I schedule the livestream, so look out for that. So yeah, I'll either see you when I'm live or when the Nightwing video comes along. Either way, I hope you have a wonderful day or night. See ya! Also going off of a suggestion, I chose the strange primate. I actually need to look up how to pronounce that word. Primate. Primate? Primate. Why is it primate? I would have pained the people in the comments again by mispronouncing another word. So primate. Primate. Okay. I always thought it was prime ape because ape. Maybe that's a different thing. I don't know. I'm getting distracted. Okay.